I'm not even gonna hold you guys. I actually have zero dopamine in my body right now. The ADHD meds are not doing what they're supposed to do, but these girls are determined not to let me rest because every time I try, they're going to do something crazy. So here we are. Hi guys, Han here. If it's not your first time with me, welcome back. And if it is your first time, hi, I'm Han. I'm a K-pop fan of around 20 years, and I've also worked here in South Korea as a marketing expert in the K-pop industry. And recently on my channel, we've been covering the ongoing saga between HYBE, MHJ, NewJeans, and ADOR. In my last video, we talked about recent statements by MHJ and NewJeans released via their respective Instagram accounts, but it seems this time the parents of NewJeans also want in on the fun. So we're going to be looking at what they have to say as they've recently released a long and questionable statement via their own Instagram account. Not only that, but we also have some big case updates that not only have me scratching my head, but genuinely have me concerned for NewJeans. As always, sources will be linked down in the description of this video, and in the interest of addressing biases, I am indifferent to ADOR and HYBE. I was indifferent to NewJeans, but slowly and surely they are trying my patience. And as you guys know, if you've watched my videos before, I am 100% anti-Min Hee Jin. As I always say, she can kick rocks. Anyway, with that being said, we always try to make logical, evidence-based conclusions and predictions on this channel. So take everything I say with a pinch of salt, check the sources yourself, make your own conclusions. But here are mine. Let's go. Last year, I uploaded what was supposed to be a one-off video talking about why I thought that parents of NewJeans were supporting Min Hee Jin despite all the cacao messages and all the news coverage and all the things we believed was evidence enough for anybody to not want to support her anymore, right? And while I thought that would be a one and done kind of video, here we are. I'm now covering the whole of ADORgate. But while I started off from a point of sympathy, they have truly left me scratching my head. While the timing of the recent move does make a lot of sense in hindsight, I do think it came as a bit of a shock to a lot of us at the time, because we actually haven't heard directly from NewJeans' parents in quite some time, even though they're constantly being implicated as like key players in this whole debacle, right? From the kind of like HYBE ADOR camp, we've seen them covered in basically the dispatch leaks, especially the most recent one, where we saw that the mothers of NewJeans were actually meeting up with Min Hee Jin way back when, but you can read about that or watch that in my last video. I'm not going to talk about that today. And also we've seen that Hyun's uncle has been like implicated in a lot of things going, I think, as far back as September last year. So we do know that the parents are kind of involved behind the scenes, and we do know they kind of play an important role. On the flip side, on Min Hee Jin's side, or on NewJeans, we'll get there. We'll get there. On NewJeans' side, we know that they even mentioned in their most recent statement that, oh, the company is trying to meet our parents and trying to divide us and blah, 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 blah. So I think from both sides, we can see that they kind of consider the parents and their position to be quite important to this case. And I think what it is actually, I think the parents have a lot of influence over the outcome of the situation. We know that ADOR is trying to communicate with NewJeans, and NewJeans are being non-receptive. They don't want to talk. They don't want to hear what they have to say. They don't want to go to the company. They've moved out of the dorms, blah, 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 right? And the parents have kind of served as a bridge for ADOR to still keep in contact with the girls to some extent without actually being able to reach them directly, right? And then on the flip side, with every decision the NewJeans make, one of the constant questions we're asking is, where are the parents? Why are they not telling the daughters to do better? Why are they not giving them better advice? Why are they not giving them more guidance? So even for us as like onlookers to the situation, we realize that these parents have a lot of influence over how things play out, especially because as adults, as grown adults, as people in their 40s, 50s, possibly 60s, they should have a much deeper understanding of what's at stake here, the risks that NewJeans are facing and the penalties that they could have to face if this doesn't end the way that they want it to end, which is the most likely case, right? So the parents are quite influential, even though they don't have any personal stakes, or at least they didn't until recently. On January 31st, fresh into the Lunar New Year, or Chinese New Year, or whatever kind of New Year you want to call it, they decided they're going to start this year with a banger, if you will, a bop. The parents of NewJeans opened up a new IG account and uploaded a very long personal statement, so we're going to take a look at it. The original name of the account was jeans_PR, although they've now changed it to NJZ_PR. We'll get to that. I know. We'll get to it. We'll get to it, guys. And personally, I think even the name is weird. Like, PR, they're saying that it's supposed to be a PR account, but I don't understand how, because they already have a PR company. They used the PR company to do their statement on November 28th when they announced that the contract was terminated, right? So I don't understand why they would need a PR Instagram account. And then on top of that, it's not PR, it's the parents. You know, like, you guys aren't a PR company. And I do think PR could stand for parents as well, but I do think that's a bit weird because I don't know. I just think it's weird. Like, yeah, PR is in parents, but if I was to abbreviate parents, that's not the letters I would pay. Anyway, I'm just being paid. But but I digress. Previously, all the public statements that parents had made had been done through various news outlets, presumably news outlets that were either in bed with the parents themselves or with MHJ. We don't really know, but they had some sort of outlet support and they were releasing exclusives. Like, every time they released a statement, it would be an exclusive to that particular news outlet. So they were using the media before, but they've decided that they want to do things directly. They want to put their own things out there. And they've obviously released their statement saying why, which we're now going to go through. Hello. We are the parents of Minji, Hani, Danielle, Herin, and Heian. This account will be operated on a temporary basis. We regret to inform you that we had no choice but to create it in order to represent our position in our dispute with Hype. Okay, from the jump, they're not using the name. We're not surprised. Mind you, this came out before the name change. So yeah, they're not using the name NewJeans. They're saying we're the parents of, and the 5 girls' names, just like NewJeans do in all their statements, right? But I do find it interesting that here at the beginning, they've said to represent our position in our dispute with Hype. Not ADOR, not Hype and ADOR, Hype. And I thought, just from the jump, that's strange, because every time NewJeans have released a statement, they've always addressed ADOR first, and then they've gone on to say Hype and ADOR every single time, because as we know, they're trying to make them one company, even though that doesn't work for the legal precedent that MHJ's already set, but blah, 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 blah. You already know. If you're watching this for the first time, you really need to go back and watch my catalogue, because I'm not going to repeat the same stuff that we've talked about already. I can't be bothered. Like, this video is going to be long enough already. It's very interesting because they said that it's our conflict with Hype, but the parents, first and foremost, should not have any conflict with Hype. It's NewJeans. And NewJeans' only conflict is with ADOR. ADOR is the one that is suing them. ADOR is the one putting an injunction against them. ADOR is the one who filed the lawsuit. So if you're going to mention anybody, surely it should have been ADOR, not Hype. But let's ask ourselves the question, who does have ongoing disputes with Hype, sponsor, main company? That's what I thought. Also, I know someone's going to say it. Yes, Hype did say they were meeting the parents much closer to the beginning when they talked about like the Grammy level producer and all that stuff. That was Hype meeting the parents, because ultimately it was Hype that was getting dragged in the public. But as of late, it's only been ADOR. Even in the previous statement that NewJeans said, they did say Hype and ADOR had been meeting their parents, but realistically, we know it's ADOR because, again, Hype is not involved in the situation. Hype is not the one taking legal action against them. It's ADOR. So I don't think that's a justification for why they would say Hype and not Hype and ADOR, or just ADOR. Like, singling out Hype is the bit that's weird to me. Anyway, let's move on. Because there are no official outlets to convey our stance, we have tried multiple times through direct interviews with various media outlets and providing factual information through journalists we know to get our message across. Thankfully, a small number of outlets did publish our story as it was. However, they were few in number. We also attempted to distribute a press release through an agency, but we faced many difficulties in ensuring our position would be reported in print without distortion. For example, headlines were often written in misleading ways. Now, this, quite simply, does not make sense. They have actually contradicted themselves in these 3 lines, because they said we had working relationships with journalists and media outlets who have published our words verbatim. They said that. But then in the next line, they're saying, oh, but too many media outlets refuse to do that. Okay, then just work with the ones who do. Like, we the audience, we the onlookers, we the jury of the public have seen your statements before, and clearly you were happy with the statements. You just said they were willing to do it. So why aren't you just continuing to do that? Why are you now going through Instagram and making statements yourself? It doesn't really make sense. Also, surely actually making an Instagram account doesn't really help If your issue is that you can't control the narrative, you can't control the headlines, if you just upload your statement on Instagram, yeah, you can say what you want, and probably you can say things that even the outlets who support you aren't willing to share. But ultimately, when people report on that, when reporters share this news, they're still going to write the headlines that they want. So what have you actually achieved by posting on Instagram? I will say one thing. I noticed that they wrote this whole thing in their Instagram comment, unlike in previous cases, we saw that MHJ and NewJeans always uploaded pictures, stories to be specific, of their comments. I do think it's interesting that the parents did it in the caption of the photo, because that's much easier to edit. Of course, once it's on the internet, it lives forever. We've got the Wayback Machine, we've got screenshots and things like that. But I do still think it's funny that they've put it somewhere that they could easily change what they've already said if they were to get in trouble for it. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, the justification for making this Instagram account doesn't really make sense, because they've even contradicted themselves. Also, I skipped over it, but like, distortions and headlines written in misleading ways and this kind of thing. Examples? Evidence? Like, also, to some extent, what do you think the media is? Like, we don't like how you wrote your headline. That is 90% of news media. They write whatever will get clicks. Like, ultimately, yeah, there are a lot of people, myself included, I'm not gonna lie to y'all, who just read headlines. If the headline is compelling enough, we might read like the introductory paragraph, and if the story is really good, we might read the whole thing. But generally, yeah, even the people who support you, as you say, are gonna write headlines that are misleading because they only present one side. Like, every news media is biased. Everyone. Like, everyone. That's why we start this video with my biases, because let's be real, it's going to impact how I tell this story. So, next part. While any comments from the members themselves have either been distorted or cited only in a negative context, or covered in just a handful of minor articles, Hive and ADOR continue to distribute hundreds of articles a day through various media outlets, including biased online platforms. These articles contain false information or content solely representing Hive and ADOR's views without going through the basic fact-checking or rebuttal processes that proper media should undertake. Now, I am not a journalist. I am not news media. I am a bitch with a camera, okay? Like, I'm just a random person online, but I have interest and investment in this industry because I've worked in it and I care about it and I followed it for a long time, and I would like to see it grow because I would like to work there again someday, okay? And of course, this is not directed at me. I'm not delusional, I'm not narcissistic. That's MHJ's thing. But I do think it's interesting that we saw this in NewJeans' statement previously. They talked about YouTube channels, they did, and then this time now the parents are talking about news channels that are biased against them or who are creating a narrative and things like this. And for me, this is one of the reasons why I try to include my sources and let you guys know my biases, but also focus on what we can actually conject based on the evidence that we've been given from both sides. If you look back on my videos, most of the time I read NewJeans' side or MHJ's side, like, statements line for line. I actually very rarely go into as much detail as ADOR. I criticize them when I think it's necessary, but I actually give, in my personal opinion, I give MHJ and NewJeans the chance to say what they want to say in their own words, in entirety, whereas I give my own interpretation of ADOR's and Hive's statements, which some people would actually say is actually biased against ADOR and Hive, because I'm not letting them say their piece to the same extent that I let NewJeans and MHJ say their piece, right? But at the same time, even though I'm letting them say their piece, I'm also entitled to give my reaction to that piece. As we are doing now, I'm entitled to say, well, hey, that doesn't make sense, or hey, that's an interesting claim that you've provided no evidence for, or hey, that's very manipulative language that is made to invoke specific emotions, but is based in nothing. Because that's what I know. As a marketer, we learn about emotive language, we learn about reverse psychology, we learn about how things are going to be perceived and what kind of action we're hoping to get out of that, right? And when I read statements like this, ever since MHJ's very first press conference, I had that feeling of like, wow, she's really good at her job. And I like, as much as I cannot stand the bitch, as much as I don't like her, you'll never find me shitting on her ability, because as a marketer, as someone who's worked in branding, as someone who's worked with IP, who understands the creative process, the checks and balances, the collaboration that goes into it, I'm not going to downplay her contribution. She definitely has a very high opinion of herself, and she definitely likes to give herself credit for other people's work, which I have a problem with. NewJeans was not made by a single person. They were made by a team of staff. But for the part that she does, the part that she plays, she generally plays a good job. So that is also one of the things that when I see things like this, and we'll get into the conjectures about MHJ's involvement in this, but when I see things like this that are so transparent and so badly done, I feel like it's intentional. Like, I feel like you could do better if you really tried, you know? And this is what this statement is giving me. It's giving me, copy my homework, but don't make it obvious. Anyway, let's get back into the parts of the statement. So there's some things in this part that a lot of people point out. Firstly is that in the first line, they refer to the members as the members rather than our daughters, which is interesting because honestly, I can see it both ways. On the one side, you could say that they're trying to be professional, right? Like, this is a public statement, even though it's a kind of emotional and like personal statement, they're also trying to present their case, and they have to do that to some extent in a logical and easy to follow way. So I understand trying to make it a bit like professional, and you could say that, oh well, they use the members because they're talking about NewJeans as a group, as a K-pop group, not just as their daughters. They're talking about them as like working professionals, right? But they did also start with, we are the parents of these people. So it's weird for you to start with that kind of sentiment of like, you're appealing to us emotionally, and then now in the statement where you're actually presenting your ideas, you're distancing yourself and saying the members instead of our daughters. Because isn't your whole stance supposed to be like, we're fighting for our children? So why would you not refer to them as your children at every given opportunity? For me, the math is not mathing. Also, the other thing is like the whole 100 articles a day thing, which so many people, like, I don't even need to tell you guys, I know everybody found that ridiculous. Presidential stuff that's happening in South Korea right now. I don't even think that like national crisis is getting 100 articles a day. 100 articles a day about what also? Because you're saying that they're sending 100 articles a day on NewJeans? On NewJeans only? Really? You think they have, firstly, are there even like 100 outlets to write articles? Do you think there's no other news happening in the K-pop industry? GD's coming back, Blackpink is going on tour, 2NE1 are getting chewed out because their tickets are expensive, apparently, even though really they're the same price as most people these days. But like, it's giving, we're the most important thing that could be happening right now. It's giving, we're the hot issue. It's giving narcissism, basically. Like, where are these hundreds of articles? Like, find me one day in this case since it started where there have been 100 articles on NewJeans specifically, mind you. They're not talking about NewJeans and Minhyejin. They're talking about NewJeans by themselves. I would be hard pressed. Also, just who has the time? Who has the time? There's so many other things to be doing. Hell, I've been covering this story for a few months now, and I barely even make a video a week about this, talking about 100 articles a day. Please. Anyway, sorry, that pissed me off. I'm just like, let's be serious. Not even that as well. If you think about it, even if let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say there were 100 articles per day, are you telling me that 100 of these articles are biased against you? Because honestly, most of the articles that I've seen and most of the articles that I've linked are just factual retellings of what have happened. They're like, today, this side released this statement. This is what legal experts have had to say about it. This is the next step that's happening. Like, this is the upcoming injunction, or this is the upcoming hearing, and then that's it. Like, just because the conclusions that a lot of people who are familiar with this industry are making are not supporting your side doesn't mean that they're like pro-hype industry plants. You know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of immature, honestly. And then once again, give us some examples. Like, give us just one article that said something that is factually incorrect and provide us with the facts. Because you're saying that they're, without going through basic fact checking or the rebuttal process. Okay, then do it for us. Like, if you really think all the media is against you, all the media is biased, give us one example and then give us the facts. Because the problem is, the reason people don't support your side is because you've not presented any facts. I'm not going to get into this today. Let's move on. Unfortunately, we have received information suggesting that, ahead of our upcoming injunction lawsuit, Haniverse and ADOR are once again circulating rumours among several reporters in order to spread false articles targeting the members. This is why we have decided to create this account. Okay, now we're getting into the real meat and potatoes of the situation. So there's two things in here that I think are quite interesting. Firstly, they say, we have received information. Interesting, because you're talking about how Hybe and ADOR, so buddy with the media, and you're talking about how everybody's biased against you. So who is this mole who's giving you information? Who is this person who's feeding you info? And how can we know, we as the audience, because bearing in mind, we have the right to know because you're appealing to us, you're sharing this information with us. How can we as the audience know that that source is trustworthy? Even if you don't want to name the person, you could be like, oh, we have a reporter, or we have someone working inside Hybe, or something like that, right? And yes, I know they don't want to out their source, because if they out their source, then the source might get cut off. But just saying somebody told me isn't evidence. It's not a convincing argument. And plus, we as the audience already know that you guys are scared, and this is the second thing, mind you, you guys are scared about something coming out because Dispatch have already said, like, we are sitting on a landmine and we are ready to watch this bitch blow. So that, plus the fact that they've already met with ADOR recently, makes me feel that this is quite the real reason for this account is they are preparing for something big to come out. They are preparing for something that could be devastating to their case, devastating to the public sympathies that they might still be hanging on to. Because this whole move, it strikes me as very unnecessary and very desperate and very ill-advised. We've already said there's not really a reason for you to make an Instagram account if you've already had news outlets who are willing to share your story. So my thinking is that you have something you want to say in the future that you know they will refuse to share because it will get them in trouble, most likely because it's not true. And then on top of that, you feel like you need to make your stance heard before Hybe. You're basically like preemptively buttering people up to not believe what Hybe and ADOR are going to say because you know it's going to be damaging to you, even though you're not actually providing evidence as to why people should support you. But the irony is, in a way, they're creating an echo chamber of supporters, because if they have this account, let's be real, the majority of people following this account are going to be people who support them, or it's going to be reporters and the few people who don't support them but are very invested in the case, i.e. people like you guys watching this video right now, right? And me. So really and truly, who are you reaching through this Instagram account? You're reaching people who already are going to side with you no matter what, or people who are just like somewhat neutral observers to the situation. The reality is that account exists to create an echo chamber of supporters. It's just for people who are already on their side. We sincerely apologise to those who may feel weary from this prolonged dispute. Nevertheless, the information we plan to share here will mainly be matters that the members cannot easily communicate themselves, as we are currently the only spokespersons for the members. We are in urgent need of a channel to convey the facts accurately, and we ask for your understanding in this regard. I find it interesting that they're saying that they're only spokespersons for the members, because literally, as I said, like 2 months ago, they just had a PR emergency press conference. So why, you're implying that they have no other avenue to speak. And honestly, I can't see much that the parents could talk about without getting in trouble that the members couldn't talk about themselves. Because mind you, anything the parents know would have had to come through the members anyway. So what could they possibly say that the members themselves could not say? As the Queens would say, after you got a mother. Okay, so now that we've been through the statement and picked out the many inconsistencies, there are still a few questions that we're left with. And the first one is, why? Why now and why like this? As we've already discussed, we know that Dispatch have said that they are about to drop something major. And mind you, it's important to mention that Dispatch is not Hybe. We talked about this in the previous 2 videos about Dispatch leaks, but Dispatch is a tabloid. They are going to support the highest bidder. They have put out things that have been damaging to Hybe and damaging to Hybe artists in the past, and this time they are putting out things that are damaging to MHJ, primarily MHJ actually, but in some cases also NewJeans. It's just very immature to say that Dispatch is supporting Hybe, but they really don't care. They're just trying to get a bag, honestly. And to be fair, as I've said in previous videos, Dispatch, as much as you might hate them, and I personally do, they're accurate. Like, they put out images, they put out screenshots, they put out things that are always proven, like almost always proven to be true. So they have a level of credibility, and that's why people wait for their posts. And clearly, whatever they are sitting on now must be huge because everybody is panicking. NewJeans are panicking. Hidden, personally, I think she's panicking a little bit. And obviously now the parents are panicking. Also, as I said, because the parents have met with ADOR recently, I feel like they are worried because probably ADOR has given them like an ultimatum or just been very upfront with them in that they are reaching the end of their rope, and we'll talk about that shortly. But I feel like ADOR is reaching the end of their rope. They're running out of patience for NewJeans, and they've probably told the parents, like, you need to get your girls in check, otherwise we're coming at you with full force. And it looks like the parents of NewJeans have decided to go in the opposite direction, and this is just their last ditch at building a defense before something climactic comes out. I don't actually think this particular statement said anything like majorly scandalous to the point that they couldn't have said this through a news media outlet, which is why I said that I think what it is that they know in the future they're going to start playing with fire, essentially, more so than now. Right now they're playing with matches, but they're about to get a flamethrower up in this bitch. I think they know that they have things that they want to say in the future that no reporter or no news outlet in their right mind would be willing to post because they would be legally liable for that. You'd be surprised, Korea doesn't have that much freedom of speech. Like, it's crazy out here. The other thing that we have to ask ourselves is, who is behind this account? And I know that seems like a non-question, but I know you're also all thinking what I'm thinking. They did say that, hey, we are the parents of NewJeans. But the first question is, if assuming the parents are actually behind this, whose parents? How many of them? Is it all the mums and all the dads? Are there any parents who are not participating in this? Because as we've seen previously, we've had Telegram messages between one of the dads of NewJeans and Hijin, right? And as we discussed previously, for Telegram messages to be shared, it means one of the two people in that chat must have shared them. Now, I personally, as much as I feel like Hijin is very crafty and sometimes she does things that don't seem to make sense on the surface, I think she'd be hard pressed to share anything that makes herself look bad, because that goes against her, like, her narcissistic self-view. Like, I could not imagine a world where she would allow herself to be dissed because she thinks it's to her benefit. So I strongly believe it was the dad. So the question is, which dad? And is that dad now participating in this account? This is another question. They said that the parents of NewJeans met ADOR, but we don't actually know it's all the parents. So it could be that there's a fizzer. There's a crack between the parents who are pro Hijin and the parents who are pro ADOR, or pro remaining with ADOR at the very least, right? So there's that question. What is the chance that not all the parents are actually involved in this Instagram account? And then there's what a lot of people think, and what I personally think as well, is that this statement at the very least was written by Hijin, and that the creation of this account was also encouraged by Hijin, because we've already talked about some things. Firstly, ongoing conflicts with Hybe. Between Hijin and NewJeans, I personally think she's got a lot more going on with Hybe. So I don't think it makes sense for NewJeans parents to say our conflict with Hybe. And then also referring to the members as the members rather than our daughters. It's very cold, it's very distant. And I mean, we already know that Hijin writes her own statements, right? And she checks them with her lawyer. We already know that she writes things for NewJeans to say. We know that she wrote the script for the YouTube. We know that she wrote the script for the initial press conference. And seeing the pattern in the statements they've made, it's very clear she's co-written all of them, essentially, if not just written them herself. We also already know that in previous statements that the parents have written, for example, their emails to Hybe, she also rewrote or revised those as well. So it's not a stretch to say that she'd be involved in the writing process of this also, especially if, as we talked in our previous video, we think that her lawyers and NewJeans' lawyers are all the same. Basically, they're all working together. And I'm sure the parents would have been part of that now. And we already know that she's met the parents too. So with all these things put together against, again, evidence-based conjectures, we can assume that Hijin would at least know that the parents plan to do this, if not have actually encouraged it. Personally, I believe that this statement was completely written by Hijin and then greenlit by the parents. I don't know who would have come up with the idea to make the Instagram account, although I, again, feel like it's Hijin, but I think she's very much in control. before they post anything, especially because bear in mind, she's going to tell them like, I've been in this industry for like 20 to 30 years. Like I've worked for SM, I've worked for Hive, I worked with Bangshock. Like obviously I'm a big player. I know what I'm doing. I'm a marketing expert. I'm a branding expert. Like I can see that anything they want to do, they're going to go to her first and be like, hey, 희진아, 이거 어때? 이거 해도 돼? 안 돼? 왜 안 되는데? 어떻게 하면 되지? Like they're going to be asking her questions all the time, and she's going to be like, 어머니 이거 아니야, 이거 아니야, 이렇게 하면 더 좋아. Like it's fine. The other thing I think as well is that I think this Instagram account is a huge liability. As I said, the internet is forever. Even if they think they're being smart by putting things in the captions, screenshots exist. Like, and we've seen Hive use screenshots against people in court before, like with aunties who then, or like stalkers and things who then take down their like Instagrams and Twitters, and then they still get taken to court. So I don't think that's a very like smart safety net or a very strong safety net. And as I said, if they're saying things that the girls themselves can't say, it's probably because the girls would be breaking an NDA, but for them to know them, that means the NDA must have been broken. Or they're going to say some like out of pocket, like offhanded things that could then be framed as defamation or something like that. And if the girls say them, I mean, either way, there's going to be legal liability, but if the girls say them, that also goes against their contracts, which could equal in more penalties than if it's just the parents. So I think that's my personal opinion. But I'm interested to hear what you guys think. What was your reaction when you saw the parent statement? What did you think of it? Did you notice anything weird that I didn't mention? Honestly, I feel like if we sit there for long enough, we can find a million other things. Anywho, before we move on, it's time for that part of the video. And if you're already subscribed, don't go away because I have something to say to you as well. But if you're not, if you watch a few of my videos and you're enjoying them, or if this is your first video and you're enjoying it, please leave a like on this video and feel free to subscribe to the channel. If you're already subscribed, firstly, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. I've been on YouTube for a long time and I've never seriously taken it as like a money-making thing or something, or like a career, but I enjoy making videos, I enjoy sharing with you guys, and clearly you guys enjoy watching, which I really appreciate. And as we are very close to 5K now, I want to do an Ask Me Anything video. So if you're already subscribed and you have some questions about this story, about me, my life in Korea, or working in the industry, working with idols, or about me as a person, please leave them in the comments below. I would really appreciate that. And this video will be out probably by the end of February, if not the start of March. So thank you very much, and let's get back into it. In my last video, we talked about how NewJeans had asked their fans to help them come up with a new name, and I asked you guys to do the same. And let me say, some of y'all are really creative. Some of you are a little bit mean though. I personally didn't want to go with something insulting because that's just not me. As much as I do think they're entitled and I do think they've been quite bratty, I do think they are also a result of failed guidance. And my goal on this channel is not to bully them, essentially. Like, I'm covering the story because it's interesting. I will criticize them when I think they're doing something stupid, but I don't wish poorly against them, if that makes sense. But on February 7th, the girls actually announced that they would be now going by the name NJZ moving forward, and appearing on stage in Hong Kong in March to perform a new debut song. Now, firstly, let me just make it very clear, I will not be calling them NJZ because NJs, you see, this is the problem. It's a mouthful. it's so bad. So after much consideration and looking through the suggestions, the consensus was basically for NewJeans or NJZ, because I think that's a very accurate representation of, firstly, where everything went wrong in their career and the size of their career after all this is over. It's going to be pretty small. Choices were made and consequences will be had. So from now on, we'll be calling them NewJeans. Anyway, although we did know that NewJeans would be announcing a new name fairly soon because they'd already asked their fans about it, the timing was quite interesting because they made the announcement just one day after the first hearing dates for their lawsuits and injunction cases with ADOR were announced. So on February 6th, the day before, it was announced that the injunction hearing, the first hearing for the injunction, would be on March 7th. And then the first hearing for the lawsuit for the validity of the contract would be on April 3rd. In typical fashion, they used their clout to shift the focus from the legal stuff to things that are a bit more favourable to them. And it was very clear that this was a very, like, foreplanned event, because not only did they announce the new name, they had done a photo shoot, they had some graphics, they even did interviews on various international outlets, which we will talk about. So it's very clear that these girls had been planning and preparing. And also, if you consider the time between when they asked for the name and when all of this was done, it almost seems like they already had the name decided. They also said that they'd be keeping the fandom name Bunnies, although they'd be writing it as BNZ to match their new name. Anyway, now, as I'm sure you guys know, using this new name, and I can't even say it, NJZ, mini jeans, is a big no-go. It's illegal, like, plain and simple. Firstly, it's a violation of the exclusive contract, which ADOR already said. ADOR said, like, if you guys make a new name, we are going to consider that a serious breach of contract. And honestly, I feel like they said that knowing that the girls would do it, because once they've said that publicly, it's now not shocking if they change their mind about, like, trying to maintain good relations. Like, if they just turn around and say, you know what, we don't think that we can move forward with NewJeans, there's no chance, we've done everything we can, which they kind of already alluded to in their previous statement, where they were like, we understand that things cannot necessarily go back to how they were. I think they kind of set that up because they already knew the girls would do it, and now it's just giving them more justification for what we ultimately know will be the end result, which is ADOR suing NewJeans. So suing NewJeans for the termination fee, that is. But what I don't understand from NewJeans' side is that ADOR is already taking legal action against you. Why are you providing more ammunition? Like, the thing that makes this different from other things they've done is that when they made their YouTube video or when they did their emergency press conference, people could kind of still, even though a lot of people turned against them from those cases, people could still see it as like they're responding to the situation, or they're giving updates on their stances, or they're pushing back against their oppressor, right? But in this case, it's very cut and dry that ADOR is not abusing their power in this case. It is very clearly, they said they were going to do something, ADOR gave them a warning, and they did it anyway. So now again, choices were made and consequences will be had. At this point, they're carrying out like direct provocations, and I really wonder, where does the audacity come from? Like, where is the confidence coming from? And I think we're going to get a bit of information. But more on the name. The other thing that is a problem here is not just the fact that ADOR told them not to make a new name, but the new name is basically trademark infringement. Now, I am not a lawyer, but I am a marketer, so I have a pretty good understanding of IP and things like that. And on top of that, I'm also a content creator to an extent, so I understand copyright to a certain degree, fair use and things like that, right? And one of the things you have to be careful when you're making like a new trademark or a new name, or like if you're making a new brand, something you have to check is, does it already exist, or does something similar already exist? Because when we think of branding, we don't just think of the verbiage. There's imagery, there's colors, there's concept. Like, for example, editing me, fighting. If I put these 3 color schemes on screen and I tell you that these each represent a soft drink brand, fizzy drinks, carbonated drinks, soda, pop, whatever you guys call it, I'm sure 90% of you are going to be able to tell me that this is Coca-Cola, this is Pepsi, and this is Sprite. Even with no words on the screen, the colors have meaning, right? And it's because these colors have meaning that then if another cola brand wanted to use red and white as their color scheme, they can't. Even they want to use the word cola, which, mind you, cola is a non-trademark term because it's referring to a type of drink. They can't do this combination because that specific combination of the word cola, red and white is understood to be Coca-Cola, right? You can look at something like Dr. Pepper, which has a very similar color scheme, but they don't use the word cola, right? They call Dr. Pepper. The point being is that trademarks is more than just what you actually own. It's also the associations that come with that. And we've already had some weigh-ins from Korean lawyers who've said that, okay, technically speaking, NewJeans, the official, like, fully written out thing, and NJS, I believe, are the trademarks that ADOR owns. But here's the thing, when international fans talk about NewJeans, the 3 most common abbreviations that I've seen personally are NJS, NWJNS, I believe, and also NJZ. So this is an abbreviation that already exists, although it may not be trademarked, it already exists and it's already associated with NewJeans. Technically, you could say, well, if it's already associated with them, why can't they use the name? Well, as we've already discussed in previous videos, they can't do any new schedules with ADOR IPs unless ADOR is involved. So in that case, because they're doing this appearance and they're putting out these images and all this stuff without ADOR's input, and these contracts are not made with ADOR, that's still a violation of the contract. It would be the exact same as if they were just using the name NewJeans. On the other hand, if you want to say, well, this is a trademark not owned by ADOR, this new name that they're using is infringing on the trademark that is owned by ADOR. So it's still a problem. And not only is it a problem, it's now a separate case to the existing contract and all this other stuff, because this is just a trademark infringement case. And from what I've seen from Korean lawyers online talking about this, the penalty for trademark infringement in Korea is up to 7 years in prison or a fine of 100 million won. Realistically, they're not going to go to prison, guys. I know some of you are wishing for that, but calm down. But they very well could be fined that 100 million won. On top of everything else they're already due to pay. Do you really need another bill? Mind you, that is the upper limit. But do you think ADOR's going to go easy on them? Do you think ADOR will not go for everything they're entitled to? Do you think ADOR will not appeal if the judge gives them something more lenient? Do you think ADOR will not try and sue each of them individually and make it 500 million? Really? And do you think NewJeans themselves think ADOR won't do that? Anyway, moving on. The other thing, and this is a very minor thing, but I thought it was funny. Bearing in mind, at the beginning of all of this, and even now in court, there's this whole thing of like, Eyelet plagiarized NewJeans. Am I the only one who thinks that NewJeans' new pictures look very Espa-esque? Is that just me, guys? Are we not seeing the resemblance? Personally, I think it's quite funny. I don't think SM is going to take any legal action against NewJeans though, because bearing in mind, and I haven't actually said this in the video yet, but I know there's a kind of like buzzing that MHJ is doing what she's doing to Hybe because she's still in pocket with SM and Kakao. And I do believe there is credit to that theory, but I don't have a deep enough understanding of the Kakao side of things to be able to comment about it. If it's something you guys really do want me to do a deep dive in, then I can hopefully turn on the ADHD research skills and go on a 2-week deep dive about that. But personally, I think SM and Kakao are like indirectly involved in this. I don't think they sent her there necessarily just to mess up Hybe. I do think she left SM for a reason, but obviously that's a network, right? She's not going to cut off all ties with SM when she leaves. And when she then herself decided that I've done with Hybe, I need out, I'm sure she spoke to them to get into cahoots and be like, hey, we basically want the same thing. I want to get out of Hybe. I don't like Hybe. I don't like Bang Shiok. You guys don't want Hybe to be a big thing. You don't like Hybe. You don't like Bang Shiok. Your company is up for sale because Issue Man's leaving and all this kind of, like, I can see that. So yeah, I don't think SM is going to sue her, especially also because she's kind of positioned herself as like a friend to, or not herself, she's positioned NewJeans as friends of Espa by sharing the text messages where Bang Shiok is like, oh, can you step on Espa? Can you beat them? And all this kind of stuff. And now we also saw, I'm going to say Minji, one of the members anyway, like posting Espa's stickers on the Hybe building and quite literally do vandalism, but I digress. But yeah, so it's kind of interesting that they've gone and jacked the style of a group that they're kind of buddy with, while also saying that this is all happening because somebody else is jacking their style. Interesting. I wonder if the stylists or like the designers or something are the same. That would be interesting. We need to find out who did this photo shoot. Anyway, copyright isn't the only legality they need to worry about. As we know, they've also said that they're going to make their debut stage with a new song at this performance in Hong Kong. They're performing at an event called ComplexCon, which is a China-based cultural event and often features big stars. And moreover, they're saying that it's going to be new music, which not surprising because all their old music is owned by ADOR. And while they are poking the bear, that would be stupid. That would be pretty dumb, I think. But this also does raise a lot of concerns and other questions. The first thing is, of course, the legality of this performance. Now, remember what I said about the first hearings? Their first hearing for the injunction to stop them signing advertising contracts, is on March 7th. And if you remember in my last video, if you watched my last video, we talked about how if ADOR wins the first injunction, all the other injunctions become easier, because the first injunction they will win based on the fact that the contract is still in dispute or the contract is still valid, right? And if they win that, it will be very easy for them. Well, if you can't do advertisements, you also can't do performances, you also can't do stage appearances, right? So if this first hearing happens and the result comes out before that performance, I think that's going to be a problem for NewJeans. Also, I would be hard-pressed to believe that we won't get an announcement on Monday that, hey, ADOR has filed a secondary injunction. And because the basis for both injunctions is essentially the same, is if the court rules that the contract is still valid or it's still under dispute, the injunction will be won by ADOR's side. So I could actually see it as them basically extending their existing. I don't know if you can do that. I'm not a lawyer. Again, I'm not a lawyer. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's like a way where they can tie the two injunctions together, or tie multiple injunctions together, and just have one or two hearings that then creates a blanket premise for everything, right? That seems quite logical to me. It seems quite doable. So what happens if ADOR wins the injunction before the performance? Are they just not going to do it? Are they going to do it for free? Can they do it for free? Because I also think, obviously, idols do non-paid content like V-Lives or Instagram Lives and stuff like that, but that is still stipulated in their contracts. And I know that for fact because if you think back to when I first became a K-pop fan, most idols did not have any form of social media except for maybe the group Twitter account, and even that was fairly new. It's not like today where idols have like their own personal accounts, their own personal Instagrams, TikToks, and all these things. And even within that, there's gonna be absolutely clauses in the contract saying what they can and can't post. And if we extend like an Instagram Live or a We Live to a stage appearance, I'm sure there's going to be rules on you can't do non-paid appearances without our approval, or you can't do non-paid appearances period unless they're through social media or something. So I could see it also being like, even if they're not paid for the performance, ADOR could still say, we did not sanction this, we did not agree to this, this was not negotiated with us, therefore it's still against the contract. Of course, NewJeans could still choose to ignore the injunction and just pay the penalty, especially if they're getting paid for the performance. I'm sure they could afford to pay the penalty for ignoring the injunction. Well, depends how big it is, I guess. But also, they would still have to then pay ADOR for like misconduct or breach of contract later if that ended up going through on the lawsuit side. So I just feel like you're playing not even with fire, you're playing with like lava, mate. Like, it's just so much unnecessary risk and it's so unlikely to work in your favor. Anyway, the other thing is, of course, the music. As we said, they can't perform NewJeans songs. I actually think them performing a new original song is actually going to cause more issues for ADOR than it will cause for them. Of course, ADOR will say, we didn't sanction this is an unofficial performance, blah, 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 blah. But I think actually where it could become sticky is if they used writers to make this song. How do the royalties work? I think, again, this is just my speculation, I think from ADOR's stance, they would say, you're still our artist, anything you create is our property, it's controlled by us. That's usually how idol, not even just idol, but like any sort of creative work you do. Like even myself as a marketer, I often have to do a lot of graphic design. Those graphic designs are usually co-owned or just owned right out by the company they did the design for, right? So I could see them being like, any music you guys make during your contract period is our music, basically. And if they use writers to write the music, ADOR would still technically have to pay those writers royalties for any money that is made from that music. But if ADOR are not getting paid for that music because NewJeans are not involving them in that process and blah blah blah, or they've involved another distribution agency or who knows, I don't know how those royalties are going to get sorted out. Even if NewJeans, I guess maybe NewJeans could have paid the writers like a one-off payment rather than royalties. Also, I would just like, interjection for those writers, I hope you have no intention of working in K-pop ever again, because I mean, you could probably work with some smaller idols and smaller companies, but you definitely are not going to be working with the likes of like Hybe, SM, JYP in the future, whatever the case might be. I feel like the rights to the song would actually create a lot of legal headache for ADOR, because if they're claiming they own the song, then they are also responsible for making sure that royalties and stuff like that are paid. But at the same time, because they weren't involved, they're not actually getting the money for it. So I feel like that's going to be a headache. Yeah, we'll see. We'll have to see what. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. You guys can tell me if you know more about it. But that does also bring me to something that I thought was quite interesting and not many people seem to be talking about. So after the girls announced their new name, they also did a live. I'm not sure what platform they did, probably Instagram, but they did a live somewhere. And during that live, Heian mentioned that they'll probably have a new agent soon, so not to worry. And she said agent, not agency, but I'm assuming she means agency. I wonder who that is. I highly doubt they're going to be based in Korea if they're smart. Maybe she's just talking wishfully and she still think Min Hee-jin is going to set something up. Maybe they already have something set up with somebody overseas, which is looking a little bit likely. Who knows? But I thought that was interesting. But that does actually lead us to our next set of questions, which is surrounding the organization of this performance. Who set it up? How did they get the new music? And why did they choose to perform in Hong Kong? And in typical ADOR Gate fashion, I think all of those questions can be answered with a single person's name, Min Hee-jin. While it will come as a surprise to nobody that Min Hee-jin is likely deeply involved in all of this, it does beg the question of why she's made her involvement so blatantly obvious this time around. Because we talked about in my last video that she's been trying to distance herself from the girls to avoid the artist tampering allegations. But this is so blatantly obvious. So she's either very cocky or she's very sloppy. ComplexCon is a China-hosted event. And if there's one thing we know about China, or maybe you guys don't know this, but in Korea, one thing that's known is that China does not give a fuck about Korea. Like, and when I say China, I don't mean Chinese people. I mean, like, China as an industry and China as a country, China as a government. There's a lot of bad blood with Korea, and obviously once you take something international, it becomes very complex, because if we're talking about international business, international law, are we going by Chinese law? Are we going by Korean law? Who are you suing? Like, there's so many things that become way more complicated because we're now crossing borders. And actually there are many cases where artists will do things like this, where they'll go to either China or Japan when they have bad, or US, when they have bad experiences in Korea or bad press in Korea. And a lot of people are referring to this as China backstabbing in the case of NewJeans. The speculation is essentially that international fans are not as sensitive to Korea law or contract law and things like this. And a lot of people, which we can see in a lot of the fans that still support NewJeans, are more interested in the personal side. They don't really care about the legalities or who's right or who's wrong. They just want to see their idols, basically. So they think that a lot of international people will be willing to continue to support NewJeans, even if they have lost favor within the Korean K-pop community or within the Korean public's eye, right? Which I think is a fairly accurate description of the current situation, right? Of course, there are people who don't particularly support NewJeans or support what they're doing per se, but there are a lot of people who still just like, I don't care, let them do what they want, whatever. Especially those who have not like deeply followed this story to the same extent that we have, right? I think this mindset is also shown from their side as well, in the fact that as soon as they announced their new name, they'd already pre-recorded interviews with like, who is it? CNN, CNBC, and Asahi, which are obviously international news outlets. It's actually ironic they didn't release anything for a domestic news outlet as far as I've seen. So it's very clear that they are trying to target international audiences now, which I think was always Min Hee-jin's intention with NewJeans anyway, because she has a bit of a reputation here in Korea. Prior to her starting to work at HYBE, a lot of people did not want her to join HYBE at the time that it was announced that she would be going there. So it's something that makes sense. But as I said, because it's a Chinese entity, it's also hard for HYBE and ADOR to carry out legal action against them. A good example of this is, for example, HYBE wanted to sue some YouTubers who were disrespecting the artists, right? And when they reached out, it was like, well, YouTube is a US company, so you have to go through Google in order to get these people's personal information. So then HYBE US went to the court and they subpoenaed the information, and I believe it was then provided to them and they were able to sue, but they had to go through the legal system in the US because Google is a US company. In this case, if they're suing the organizers of this ComplexCon, that's a Chinese-based company. Yes, you know who the CEO is, but do they need to then hire a Chinese legal firm? And then is the case going to be ruled under Chinese law or Korean law? Are Korean contracts even acknowledged in Chinese law? Also, just the scale of China and Chinese companies, even companies and brands that only sell in China, they have a customer base of a billion people, right? So there's also speculation that even if they are expecting to pay the penalties for the performance or for the trademark infringement, they might have a Chinese investor who's already willing to foot that bill. Hell, they might even have a Chinese investor who's willing to foot the penalty for the girls to leave their contract, and they're just dragging this out to harm ADOR's image as much as they can in the process. Because let's be real, for them to be acting as brazenly as they are, they have to have confidence coming from somewhere. Like, they have to have somebody backing them for them to be so openly doing the wrong thing, like doing things that are essentially illegal. Like, they have to have something that they're believing in, something the parents are believing in and the girls are believing in, to justify what they're doing. But bringing this back to our favourite person, the other thing that makes her involvement in this obvious is the fact that NewJeans do not follow Complex Con's official account on Instagram. But Complex Con's official account follows MHJ. Interesting, no? I think so. I feel like at this point, the things that should be connecting should have connected. Like, if 1 and 1 is not equaling 2 in your mind, nothing I can say can explain this to you at this point. Like, you just get it or you don't get it. The girls who get it, and the guys who don't, you know? Like I said, we know that MHJ has wanted to target international fans with NewJeans from the very beginning. We know she's been looking for investors both domestically and internationally. We know she's using her industry relationships to make back alley deals and get appearances and things like that for NewJeans. The instigator of all of this has always been clear. We can also be sure that this new music they're making is probably through writers that she's probably found herself, and possibly also in Chinese, so that those writers don't have to fear retaliation from the K-pop industry because they're not Korea based. And hell, if they release a music video, we already know who the director's going to be as well, don't we? But you know what we don't know? I'm about to run. Prepare yourselves. Where the hell are the lawyers? Sorry, I shouldn't shout into the mic, but I'm pissed off because, again, where is the legal, like, until the previous statement, the one that we talked about in the last video, there was still some ambiguity about who was representing NewJeans legally, who was advising them, right? We talked about how the parents said they got lawyers, but we didn't know who they were. We talked about how they did the press conference and how they've made all their public statements by themselves, never through a law firm, never through a PR agency, even though they use PR agencies to set up their press conference. And then in the last statement, they finally said, okay, we're using Sejong. And we also talked about why that's not necessarily a good thing and why them using the same lawyers as MHJ could be a big problem. But if they now are so openly saying that, hey, these are our lawyers from Sejong, the number 2 law firm in Korea, because we're going against the number 1 law firm when we're fighting with ADOR and Hype, I really question what the intentions of these lawyers are. Someone did say it. I think it was in the comments of my last video or in a video that I saw. I can't remember. But someone did mention that ultimately the winners out of all of this are the lawyers on both sides, because they're getting one hell of a paycheck. Oh God, I want to see that kind of money. I don't think I'll see that kind of money in my lifetime, if I'm honest with you. Yeah, they're going to be making a lot of money. Whether they win, whether they lose, they don't really care. They just want this to drag out for as long as they can, right? But they do still have an ethical obligation, I believe, to advise their clients in like a reasonable, sensible manner. And I cannot imagine a lawyer sitting in a room with NewJeans and saying, yeah, go for it. Like, make a new name, go and perform in Hong Kong, go and do your thing, write a new song. Like, I cannot imagine it. Like, yes, Sejong has a reputation to uphold. Honestly, I don't think they'd be that bothered by this because entertainment isn't usually their area and it's not what they've built their reputation on, like the law firm this is. So I feel like to a certain degree, if they lose the case, it's not the be all end all. And like I said, they're still getting that back. What was it that MHJ said? 2.3 billion that she owed as of October. So who knows what it is now. And then if we add, technically NewJeans has 5 clients, I'm sure. So that's going to be like per head. They're going to be paying a lot of money. But anyway, my point being, I cannot understand how any lawyer can sit back and watch this happen. Even if we go down the path of, yeah, they have some Chinese backers or some Chinese investors who have said that, oh, we're ready to put down the money, and that's the agency that Hayen's talking about, and that they have something set up and they're not worried about the bill per se. Still, I feel like these girls are not, like, yes, dragging it out is not good for ADOR, but it's also not good for you either. It's putting a delay on you doing your own thing. It's not actually having the effect you want, because people are sympathetic to ADOR now. Like, people, if you had done this, like, if you had ended this in like September, maybe even October last year, I feel like a lot more people from the general public at the very least would be on NewJeans' side. But the more they do and the longer they drag this out, this is only harming their image. So I can't see what the end goal is here. What is the big play? Because yes, they are reducing the name value of NewJeans, but I don't think it's, somebody mentioned this in a comment of my last video, I'm not sure if this is true, but they said that the valuation for NewJeans, like brand worth, would be based on what it was at the time that the contract would have been terminated. So back in November, right? Not at the time that the court decides that, oh yeah, it's like, this is done now. So if that is the case, assuming that is the case, all they're doing to like hurt the brand name is not actually benefiting NewJeans, like MiniJeans themselves, right? Whereas on the flip side, for MiniJean, and I think it was Asian Culture and Entertainment, I can't remember what her channel is, but I think you guys know who I'm talking about. The lady from the US, she made a video about some of the legal stuff about this, and I thought she pointed out a very good point about MiniJeans shares, and this was actually her quoting information given by an interview that a Korean lawyer had done, and basically he was saying that she's due her 13%, right? And with her higher valuation or no higher valuation, regardless of what it is, she's asking for, I believe, 26 million. That's the value that she would get. I can't remember if that's the base value. Whatever the case, she's asking for about 26 million won. And she's asking that because at the time that she left, that would be the value of her 13% of shares that she can sell immediately. Although she owns 18%, because of the way her contract was set up, she can only sell 13 at once and then get that back, and there's some technicalities there that is not really important. The important thing is that she's going based on the value of ADOR at the time that she left, right? But what he said is that if they go through this court process and by some miraculous miracle, MiniJean wins, which is very unlikely, she can only get 13% of the current value of ADOR, because that's when the decision made. So it's actually quite the opposite. In NewJeans' case, if they're asserting that their contract, this is their side, remember, they're asserting their contract ended on November 28th, then they have to pay based on their brand value on November 28th. Whereas in MiniJean's case, if she reduces the brand value of ADOR, she gets the money based on the day that the court rule that she should get her shares. So her ruining ADOR's value does not actually benefit her. It just destroys the company. And also, mind you, she's not the only shareholder. Hive is a shareholder, so they're going to get a payout. Anybody else who owns stocks is going to get a payout. Investors are going to get their return on investment. So she might not necessarily be the first in line to get her money. And maybe by the time they've gone through all those other people, there's not even anything left to give to her. So yes, she might have won in principle, but she might not actually get what she's hoping to get out of it. So it just doesn't make sense. Like, there's no logic to anything that is happening, even if you want to go down the right of they have the Chinese backers and they have the money, and it's like, but still, why are you doing this? Like, what is the end goal here? Because it's not working. You're not hurting ADOR, you're not hurting their image, you're hurting your own image, you're reducing the number of people who support you. There are so many people, and as I said, my goal on this channel is not to bully NewJeans, it's not to insult them, it's not to wish poorly on them, but there are so many people who I see in my comments who are like, I don't even care anymore. I am ready to see NewJeans go to shit. I want them to pay. I want them to have the worst consequence. Like, for me personally, I'm concerned. Like, genuinely, I'm concerned because I feel like these girls are on the road to ruin their lives. And it's really worrying to me. I say it again, it's really worrying to me that there seems to be nobody in their camp that has their best interest in mind. And actually, you know what? After thinking about this a bit more, I actually think the biggest problem here is their parents. For the longest time, it was MiniJean, and I still think she's a big problem. I'm not downplaying her role in all of this. She is the instigator of all of this. She's the one who started all of this. But I do believe that as much as I say, like, there's personal accountability and you have to take personal responsibility for the choices that you made, and I think NewJeans are now having to do that, where are their parents? Like, as I said, my very first video on this whole thing was why I thought the parents supported MHJ and how I could understand it at that time. But us having come this far, them clearly having been scared by whatever ADOR said at their last meeting, them going to these lengths to try and defend themselves publicly, even though their defense doesn't make sense, clearly the parents are starting to panic now. And my question is, what could she possibly be promising you that is worth your lives and your daughter's lives? Because this, for me, this is too much. Like, we've gone too far. I've been saying for a long time that I feel like we are approaching that point of no return. This is it for me. I think this is the point of no return. I think this is the point where ADOR are going to turn around. I'm guaranteed on Monday they're going to turn around and they're going to be like, you know what? Fuck these kids. No, but like, in all seriousness, I for a while I thought, okay, maybe there's something behind the scenes that I can't see, obviously, but I genuinely feel at this point that these parents are just willfully and woefully ignorant of how much shit they are putting their kids in, and now putting themselves in, mind you, because now they start making statements, they're all going to be liable for anything. Like, that's nothing. Even though we don't know which parents are involved, I'm sure all the parents will be liable for anything they say on their Instagram account, regardless of whether they were involved or not, unless they're very much in ADOR's pocket and they know that, okay, this one parent didn't participate, but if the wife or the husband of that parent did, well, they're still liable, you know? Like, ultimately, it's their family's fortune, it's their family's future that is at risk here. And yeah, I just feel like they've failed their children, and it's very sad. And it's one of those cases, you know, when you see like somebody ruining their own life, but they blame everyone and everything around them and they don't take any responsibility for all the problems that they're having. I feel like that's what's happening in this situation. Everybody's going to turn around and be like, oh, well, Minhijin said this, or like, Hyun's mom said this, or Minji's dad said this, or I don't know. Like, there's too many cooks spoil the soup, right? There's too many people involved. Nobody is making executive decisions with the right goal in mind. I feel like they're just all money hungry, and they have this level of entitlement, and they think it's also giving like helicopter parent, like, my child is the most special child in the world, how dare you. Like, there's just so many issues, there's so many problems, and I am genuinely concerned for NewJeans now, because like I said, I think they've come to that point of no return, and I don't know what's going to happen to them moving forward, because I don't know how they're going to recover from this long term. Anyway, the last thing I want to cover in today's video is the fact that apparently there's a NewJeans support group actually here in Korea called NewJeans Gallery, and they are actively attacking YouTube channels and social media accounts that show not even necessarily support for Hybe or ADOR, but report or share anything that is unfavourable to NewJeans. And I thought this would be a good point to say, like, hey guys, as of yet I haven't noticed anything, but I'm sure that I will be on the list in due time. So if you haven't, you can check out some of my social media down below and follow me there, just so if something happens, you can keep in touch and I can keep in touch. Or if you guys think it would be worth it, should I make a second channel? I don't know. I mean, if I did, I could post some like outtakes or something. I don't know. Would you guys be interested in that? Let me know. Anyway, check out the ADOR Gate playlist if you haven't seen all of the coverage that I've done so far, or check out my last video if you want to hear us talk about the statements from NewJeans and Minhijin. Otherwise, this has been Han from the Haniverse. Thanks for stopping by. I know you guys want to see him. Look, he's sleeping on the sofa behind me. Oh, yeah, my baby.